The elevator's mirrored walls reflected Sarah Chen's determined expression as she ascended to the 42nd floor of Meridian Technologies. Her laptop bag contained 3 months of meticulous research, market analysis, and what she believed was the breakthrough innovation that would revolutionize their cybersecurity division. The presentation she'd perfected until 2 in the morning was more than just a proposal. It was her vision for the company's future, and her ticket to the executive team she'd been fighting to join for 5 years. The familiar ding announced her arrival, and Sarah stepped into the pristine hallway lined with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle. She'd walked this path hundreds of times, but today felt different. Today, everything would change. "Sarah, perfect timing," called Jennifer Walsh, Marcus Blackwood's executive assistant, from behind her mahogany desk. "He's ready for you." Marcus Blackwood. The name alone commanded respect throughout the tech industry. At 53, he had built Meridian Technologies from a startup in his garage to a billion-dollar cybersecurity empire. His corner office was legendary, a shrine to success with awards lining the walls, photos with world leaders, and a view that made visitors feel like they were on top of the world. Sarah had worked under his shadow for 5 years, climbing from junior analyst to senior strategist, watching other executives come and go while she remained steadfast in her belief that merit would eventually triumph. She'd seen Marcus promote less qualified candidates, always men, always from his inner circle. But today would be different. Her innovation was undeniable. "Come in, Sarah." Marcus didn't look up from his dual monitors as she entered. His salt and pepper hair was perfectly styled, his Italian suit immaculate. The office smelled of expensive cologne and the leather from his custom furniture. "I assume you're here about the promotion to Vice President of Innovation." "Yes, sir. I've prepared a comprehensive presentation showcasing the quantum encryption protocol I've developed. The market potential alone. Save it." Marcus finally turned, his steel-gray eyes cold and calculating. "Sit down." Sarah's confidence wavered slightly, but she maintained her composure as she settled into the chair across from his imposing desk. Behind him, Seattle's skyline stretched endlessly, a reminder of how high she was and how far she could fall. "Sarah, you're brilliant, I won't deny that." Marcus leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Your technical skills are exceptional, and your work ethic is admirable. But leadership? Vision? That's something entirely different. My quantum encryption protocol could capture 30% of the enterprise market within 2 years, Sarah said, opening her laptop. "I have the data." "I've seen your work," Marcus waved dismissively. "Impressive from a technical standpoint, but you're missing the bigger picture. Do you know what separates successful leaders from brilliant employees?" Sarah remained silent, sensing a trap. Presence. Authority. The ability to command a room full of skeptical investors and make them believe. Marcus stood and walked to his window, hands clasped behind his back. "When I walk into a boardroom, people listen. When I speak, markets move. That's not something you can learn from textbooks or late-night coding sessions. With respect, sir, I've successfully led 3 major projects this year, all delivered on time and under budget. My team consistently outperforms." "Your team." Marcus turned sharply. "You mean the team I assigned to you? The resources I provided? The clients I secured?" His voice grew colder with each word. "Sarah, you've succeeded here because I allowed it. Because I created the environment where your talents could flourish. Remove that support, and what are you?" The words hit like physical blows. Sarah felt her carefully constructed confidence beginning to crack, but she pressed on. "My innovations speak for themselves. The quantum protocol will be implemented by David Morrison as our new VP of Innovation." The world seemed to tilt. David Morrison, 2 years her junior, half her experience, and the CEO's golf partner. Sarah's mouth went dry. "I don't understand." David has the vision to see beyond the technical specifications. He understands market dynamics, investor relations, and strategic partnerships. Most importantly, he has the presence our clients expect from leadership. "He didn't create the protocol," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. Creation and implementation are different skills. Marcus returned to his desk, his expression businesslike. David will receive full credit for the innovation. It's better for everyone this way, for the company, for the product launch, and frankly for you. Sarah stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. 5 years of dedication, countless 60-hour weeks, sacrificed weekends, and missed family gatherings, all reduced to a footnote in someone else's success story. I could take this to HR, she managed. Marcus laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. Sarah, who do you think approved this decision? Do you know how corporate hierarchies work? I am HR. I am operations. I am strategy. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I am this company. The room felt suffocating. Sarah's hands trembled as she closed her laptop. Her presentation, 3 months of work, now meaningless. You have 2 choices, Marcus continued, settling back into his chair like a king delivering judgment. Accept the situation gracefully, continue in your current role with a modest raise, and perhaps in a few years, we'll revisit your potential. Or, he let the word hang in the air like a threat. Or you can make this difficult. File complaints, create drama, make accusations you can't prove. In which case, I'll be forced to question your judgment, your teamwork, and your commitment to company values. Your next performance review might be quite different from your previous ones. Sarah felt trapped in a nightmare. The man she'd respected, whose approval she'd sought for years, was systematically destroying everything she'd worked for. But something deeper than shock was building inside her, a flame of anger that Marcus's cold calculation couldn't extinguish. You know what your real problem is, Sarah? Marcus's voice took on a patronizing tone that made her skin crawl. You don't understand power. You think competence equals leadership, that innovation equals success. But this isn't a meritocracy. It's business. And in business, relationships matter more than algorithms. Sarah stood slowly, her legs unsteady. I've given this company everything. And the company has given you a career, a salary, and opportunities you never would have had elsewhere. Marcus's expression remained unchanged. Don't romanticize your contribution. You're talented, but talent is common. What's rare is the ability to build something from nothing, to inspire loyalty, to make the hard decisions that lesser minds can't stomach. The words were designed to wound, and they found their mark. But as Sarah looked at Marcus, really looked at him, she saw something she'd missed before. Behind the expensive suit and corner office, beneath the practiced authority and cold confidence, was a man so insecure about his own achievements that he needed to diminish others to feel powerful. You're right, Sarah said quietly, her voice steadying. I don't understand your kind of power. Marcus smiled, mistaking her concession for defeat. I'm glad we understand each other. Take the weekend to process this. Monday morning we'll announce David's promotion and move forward positively. Sarah nodded and turned toward the door, her mind racing. As she reached for the handle, Marcus delivered his final blow. Sarah, she paused without turning around. You're brilliant. But brilliance without backing is just noise. You'll never succeed without support, without resources, without someone like me opening doors. Remember that when you're tempted to do something foolish. She left without another word, walking through the pristine hallway that now felt like a mausoleum of her ambitions. The elevator ride down felt endless, each floor marking her descent from the heights of corporate power to the reality of her powerlessness. In the parking garage, sitting in her modest Honda Civic surrounded by the luxury cars of executives who'd never worked half as hard as she had, Sarah finally allowed the tears to come. But through the pain and humiliation, that flame of anger continued to burn. Marcus had made one critical mistake in his character assassination. What Shashire tarred in. He'd underestimated her. The weekend passed in a blur of rage, planning, and decision-making that would have terrified the Sarah who'd entered that corner office on Friday afternoon. By Sunday night, her resignation letter was written, her personal files were copied, and her next steps were clear. Marcus Blackwood had taught her a valuable lesson about power, just not the one he'd intended. Real power wasn't about corner offices or commanding presence. It wasn't about diminishing others or taking credit for their work. Real power was the courage to bet on yourself when everyone else counted you out. And Sarah Chen was about to discover just how powerful she really was. Monday morning arrived like a death sentence. Sarah sat in her car outside Meridian Technologies, staring at the gleaming corporate tower that had been her second home for 5 years. Her resignation letter lay in the passenger seat, 2 paragraphs that would sever every professional relationship she'd built, every connection that had defined her identity. The parking garage buzzed with the usual morning energy. Colleagues hurried past her car, clutching coffee cups and checking phones, blissfully unaware that their world was about to shift. In 3 hours, Marcus would announce David Morrison's promotion, and her quantum encryption protocol would officially become his breakthrough innovation. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her younger sister Lisa. "Good luck with the big presentation today. Dad's already bragging to his poker buddies about his daughter, the future VP. Call me after." The weight of disappointing everyone who believed in her felt crushing. Her parents had sacrificed everything to immigrate from Taiwan, working multiple jobs so she could focus on her studies. Her father still introduced her as "my daughter," the computer genius at the big company. How could she explain that genius meant nothing when power decided otherwise? She climbed out of her car and rode the elevator to the 37th floor, where her cubicle waited in the sea of identical workstations. The space that had once felt like a launching pad now resembled a prison cell. Her few personal items, a photo with her parents at her MIT graduation, a small jade plant, a mug declaring "world's best debugger," looked pathetic against the corporate backdrop. "Sarah, thank God you're here." Tom Rodriguez, her closest colleague and the only person she'd considered a friend in the company, appeared beside her cubicle. His usually cheerful demeanor was replaced by confusion and concern. "I just heard the most ridiculous rumor about David Morrison getting promoted to VP of Innovation. Please tell me it's not true." Sarah's throat tightened. Tom had been her ally through every late-night debugging session, every breakthrough, every small victory. He'd seen her pour her soul into the quantum encryption project. "It's true," she whispered. Tom's face went through a series of expressions: disbelief, anger, and finally resignation. "But your protocol, you spent months perfecting it. The implementation alone belongs to David now." Sarah opened her laptop, pretending to work while her world crumbled around her. Marcus made it very clear that creation and implementation are different skills. "That's insane." Tom lowered his voice, glancing around to make sure they weren't overheard. "This is your life's work. There has to be something you can do. HR, legal, whistleblower protection. Marcus is HR, Marcus is legal, Marcus is everything." Sarah's voice was flat, defeated. He made that abundantly clear. The morning passed in a haze of meaningless tasks and sympathetic glances from colleagues who'd heard whispers of the decision. Sarah went through the motions of checking emails, reviewing code, and attending meetings where she was no longer allowed to contribute meaningfully. She was a ghost haunting her own life. At 11 a.m., the official announcement came via company-wide email. David Morrison, VP of Innovation. Revolutionary Quantum Encryption Protocol. Game-changing market opportunity. Sarah's name appeared once, buried in the acknowledgments section. Special thanks to the development team, including Sarah Chen, for their technical contributions. Technical contributions. 5 years of leadership, innovation, and dedication reduced to a footnote. Her phone exploded with messages. Colleagues expressing outrage, friends offering support, family members confused by news reports that didn't mention her name. Each message felt like a fresh wound, reminding her of how completely she'd been erased from her own story. By noon, Sarah couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her resignation letter and headed to Marcus's office, passing David Morrison in the hallway. He avoided eye contact, but she caught his expression, guilt mixed with excitement. He knew exactly what he was taking credit for. "Sarah." Jennifer Walsh looked up from her desk with genuine sympathy. "I'm so sorry about the announcement, it's not right. I need to see Marcus. He's in back-to-back meetings until 4. Can I schedule you for now?" Sarah's voice carried a steel that surprised them both. "Tell him I need 5 minutes." He'll want to hear what I have to say. Jennifer made the call, and within minutes, Sarah was back in the corner office that had become the site of her professional execution. Marcus looked up from his computer with an expression of mild annoyance. "Sarah, I hope you're not here to cause drama. We had an agreement." "We did." Sarah placed her resignation letter on his desk. "I'm done." Marcus glanced at the letter, then back at her with amusement. "You're quitting. Over this." "Sarah, you're being emotional. Take a few days to think it through. You'll realize this is the best outcome for everyone." "The best outcome for everyone." Sarah repeated the words slowly, tasting their bitterness. "You steal my work, destroy my reputation, and gaslight me into believing it's for my own good. And you think I'm being emotional?" "I'm not stealing anything. The work was done on company time, with company resources, under company direction. It belongs to Meridian, not to you." Marcus leaned back in his chair, his tone patronizing. "This is exactly the kind of thinking that proves you're not ready for leadership. Everything isn't about you, Sarah." The irony was so thick Sarah almost laughed. "You're right, it's not about me. It's about power, control, and your pathological need to diminish anyone who threatens your ego." Marcus's expression hardened. "Careful, Sarah. You're walking a very thin line. What are you going to do? Fire me? Ruin my reputation? You've already done both." Sarah felt a strange liberation in having nothing left to lose. "But you made one mistake, Marcus. You revealed exactly who you are, and now I know what I'm up against." "What you're up against?" Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Sarah, you have no idea what you're up against. This industry is smaller than you think. People talk. Recruiters call me for references. Your next employer will want to know why you left, and I'll tell them exactly what kind of employee you were." The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Sarah realized that Marcus wasn't just taking her current job. He was trying to destroy her future. But instead of fear, she felt something else crystallizing inside her. Absolute clarity. "You know what, Marcus? You're absolutely right. I don't know what I'm up against. But I'm about to find out." She turned toward the door, then paused. "And when I do, you'll be the first to know." "Sarah?" Marcus's voice stopped her at the threshold. "You'll be back. In 6 months, maybe a year, when the reality of starting over hits you, when the rejection letters pile up and the bills come due, you'll realize what you had here. And maybe, if you ask nicely, there might still be a place for you." Sarah looked back at him one final time. "I'd rather fail on my own terms than succeed on yours." She walked out of Meridian Technologies for the last time, past the cubicles where her former colleagues pretended to work while stealing glances at her exodus, past the reception desk where she'd entered as a hopeful graduate 5 years ago, and into the Seattle afternoon that felt like stepping into a void. In her car, Sarah sat in stunned silence for several minutes before the reality hit her. She was unemployed, blacklisted, facing an uncertain future with nothing but her savings, her skills, and a burning desire to prove Marcus Blackwood wrong. Her phone rang. "Lisa." "Sarah, I've been trying to reach you all day. Dad saw the news about your company's big innovation announcement, but your name wasn't mentioned. What's going on?" Sarah stared at the Meridian building through her windshield, watching people she'd once considered colleagues entering and leaving the lobby. "I quit." "You what? But the promotion." "There was no promotion. There was theft, betrayal, and a very expensive lesson about how the world really works." Sarah's voice was surprisingly steady. "But I'm okay. Actually, I'm better than okay. I'm free." The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. Then Lisa's voice, cautious but supportive. "What are you going to do?" Sarah started her car, backing out of the parking space for the last time. "I'm going to build something they can't steal. Something they can't control. Something that will make Marcus Blackwood wish he'd never underestimated me." "That sounds terrifying and amazing." "It is." Sarah pulled onto the street, Seattle's skyline receding in her rearview mirror. "It absolutely is." That night, In her modest apartment overlooking Elliott Bay, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with her laptop, a legal pad, and the strongest coffee she could brew. The quantum encryption protocol was lost to her, locked away in Meridian servers and David Morrison's presentation slides. But the knowledge that created it, the innovative thinking that drove it, the relentless problem-solving that perfected it, that belonged to her. Marcus had taught her that success wasn't about merit or innovation. It was about control, resources, and the power to shape narratives. He'd shown her exactly how the game was played, and in doing so, he'd given her the blueprint for beating him at it. As the city lights twinkled beyond her window, Sarah began to write. Not a business plan or technical specification, but something more fundamental. A declaration of war against everything Marcus Blackwood represented. By dawn, she had filled 17 pages with ideas, strategies, and the foundation of what would become her greatest innovation yet. Not just a product, but a company built on the principles Marcus had abandoned: merit, integrity, and the radical idea that the best person for the job should actually get it. The dark night was ending, and Sarah Chen was ready to find out what she was truly capable of, when the only person betting on her was herself. 3 weeks after walking out of Meridian Technologies, Sarah's savings account had dwindled to 4 digits, and her confidence had taken an even bigger hit. The coffee shop on Capitol Hill had become her makeshift office, a corner table by the window where she nursed lattes that cost more than she could afford, while building what she hoped would become the foundation of her empire. Another refill? Maya, the barista with purple-streaked hair and kind eyes, appeared beside her table laden with legal pads, technical manuals, and a laptop held together with electrical tape. Please. Sarah looked up from her screen, rubbing eyes that burned from 16-hour coding sessions. And maybe some of that optimism you always seem to have in stock. Maya laughed as she refilled Sarah's cup. Rough day in the world of... What exactly are you building over here? I see a lot of diagrams that look like they could either solve world hunger or accidentally create a black hole. Sarah glanced around the nearly empty cafe before leaning in conspiratorially. Next-generation cybersecurity infrastructure. Think of it as an immune system for digital networks that learns and adapts in real time. That sounds incredibly complicated and potentially world-changing. It is. The complicated part, anyway. The world-changing part remains to be seen. Sarah took a grateful sip of fresh coffee. Right now it's mostly just a very expensive way to avoid sleeping. The truth was more sobering than she wanted to admit. Her adaptive security protocol was theoretically brilliant, a quantum leap beyond anything currently on the market, including her stolen encryption work at Meridian. But theory and implementation were separated by months of development, hundreds of thousands of dollars in infrastructure costs, and the small matter of having no clients, no team, and no credibility in an industry where Marcus Blackwood's influence stretched further than she'd imagined. Her phone buzzed with another rejection email, this one from Tech Forward Ventures, the 4th venture capital firm, to pass on her initial pitch. The feedback was always the same. Innovative concept, but we have concerns about market timing and execution capabilities. Translation: you're nobody, and nobody invests in nobody. Sarah closed her laptop and gathered her papers, preparing for another evening of battling code in her apartment. As she reached for her jacket, a voice from the next table made her freeze. Sarah Chen? From Meridian? She turned to see a woman about her age, with short auburn hair and sharp green eyes, wearing a Stanford hoodie and designer jeans that somehow managed to look both casual and expensive. Sarah recognized her immediately. Drive. Ava Winters, one of the most respected AI researchers in the Pacific Northwest and former MIT colleague she'd lost touch with after graduation. Ava? Sarah's voice cracked slightly. What are you doing here? Same thing you are, I suspect, hiding from the corporate world while pretending to have my life together. Ava gestured to her own laptop and scattered notes. Mind if I join you? I couldn't help overhearing your conversation with the barista. Adaptive cybersecurity? That's ambitious. Sarah hesitated. In her current state, unemployed, nearly broke, and running on caffeine and desperation, she wasn't exactly projecting success. But Ava's smile seemed genuine, and Sarah realized how desperately she missed talking to someone who understood the technical challenges she was facing. Sure, but fair warning, I'm not exactly great company these days. Ava slid into the opposite chair, her expression becoming more serious. I heard about what happened at Meridian, the quantum encryption protocol that suddenly became David Morrison's breakthrough innovation. Sarah's stomach clenched. How did you? The tech community is smaller than you think, especially among people who actually understand quantum cryptography. Ava's voice carried a mixture of sympathy and anger. What Marcus Blackwood did to you was unconscionable. But it wasn't surprising. You know Marcus? Unfortunately. Ava's expression darkened. He tried to poach me from Stanford 3 years ago. When I declined, he made sure certain research grants became mysteriously unavailable. Marcus doesn't handle rejection well. The revelation that Sarah wasn't Marcus's only victim was simultaneously comforting and terrifying. If someone with Ava's reputation and institutional backing could be targeted, what chance did Sarah have as a lone entrepreneur? So, what are you working on? Sarah asked, partly to change the subject and partly because she was genuinely curious. Advanced machine learning algorithms for predictive analysis. Specifically, I'm trying to develop AI that can anticipate and counter cyber threats before they fully materialize. Ava paused, studying Sarah's reaction. Which, if I'm understanding your work correctly, would pair rather elegantly with an adaptive security infrastructure. Sarah's mind raced. She'd been so focused on the technical challenges of her own system that she hadn't fully considered how it might integrate with cutting-edge AI. You're talking about a symbiotic defense network. The AI predicts threats while my adaptive protocol's evolving to counter them in real time. Exactly. Individually, our systems are innovative. Together, they'd be revolutionary. Ava leaned forward, her eyes bright, with the kind of excitement Sarah hadn't felt from another person in weeks. Have you considered partnership? With you? Sarah couldn't hide her surprise. Ava, you're tenured faculty at Stanford with unlimited research resources. I'm an unemployed ex-corporate drone working out of coffee shops. You're also the person who developed quantum encryption protocols that are apparently so advanced that billion-dollar companies are willing to steal them rather than try to compete with them. Ava's voice was steady, serious, and more importantly, you're someone who chose principle over security. That's rarer than you might think. Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. But it was immediately tempered by reality. Even if we could make the technology work, we'd need infrastructure, funding, clients. Marcus wasn't wrong about the challenges of building something from nothing. Marcus was wrong about a lot of things, but you're right about the challenges. Ava pulled out her phone, scrolling through contacts. Which is why we need more than just brilliant technology. We need someone who understands the business side of innovation. You have someone in mind? Maybe. Ava found what she was looking for and showed Sarah a photo from a recent tech conference. Elena Rodriguez. She built and sold 2 software companies before she was 35, and she's been looking for her next big project. More importantly, she has a reputation for backing underdogs with breakthrough technologies. Sarah studied the photo of a Latina woman with silver-streaked hair and a confident smile, standing next to a banner for TechCrunch Disrupt. Why would someone like that be interested in 2 unemployed researchers with a theoretical product? Because Elena got her start exactly the same way. She was pushed out of her first job for challenging the status quo, and she's made a career of proving that the best ideas don't always come from the biggest companies. Ava put her phone away. I've been following her work for years. If anyone would understand what we're trying to do, it's her. Sarah's mind was spinning with possibilities, but years of disappointment had taught her caution. This is a lot to process. A partnership, potential funding, building something that could actually compete with established players. Sarah, Ava's voice was gentle but firm. What's the alternative? Going back to the corporate world where people like Marcus Blackwood control your future? Settling for a safe job where your innovations become someone else's success stories? The question hit Sarah like a physical blow, because she'd been asking herself the same thing every night for 3 weeks. The path forward was terrifying and uncertain, but the path backward was impossible. What would be the first step? Sarah asked quietly. We perfect the integrated technology. Your adaptive protocols, my AI prediction systems, working together seamlessly. Then we approach Elena with a working prototype and a business plan that proves we're not just brilliant theorists, we're practical innovators ready to change the world. Sarah looked around the coffee shop that had become her refuge, then back at Ava's expectant face. 3 weeks ago, she'd been a cog in Marcus Blackwood's machine. Now she was being offered the chance to build something that could make that machine obsolete. How long do you think it would take to develop a working prototype? With both of us working full-time? 6 to 8 weeks. Maybe less if we can find the right development environment. Ava paused. I have access to Stanford's quantum computing lab after hours. It's not exactly official, but my research privileges are broad enough to cover collaborative projects. Sarah felt her pulse quickening. For the first time since walking out of Meridian, she could see a path forward that didn't involve compromise or surrender. Ava, if we do this, if we really commit to building something revolutionary, there's no guarantee it will work. We could spend months perfecting technology that never finds a market. True. But if we don't try, we're guaranteed to fail. Ava extended her hand across the table. Partners. Sarah looked at the offered hand, remembering Marcus's words about her inability to succeed without backing, without resources, without someone like him opening doors. But this was different. This wasn't about finding someone to elevate her. This was about finding someone to build with. She shook Ava's hand firmly. Partners. Over the next 6 weeks, Sarah discovered what it meant to work with someone who shared her vision, rather than simply managing her output. The Stanford Quantum Lab became their playground, a high-tech cave where they pushed their integrated systems to theoretical limits and beyond. The work was exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. 18-hour days blended into each other as they solved problems that had seemed impossible when Sarah was working alone. Ava's AI algorithms learned to predict cyber threats with startling accuracy, while Sarah's adaptive protocols evolved in real time to counter attacks that hadn't even been fully launched. Look at this, Ava called out during one of their midnight sessions, her voice hoarse from hours of coding. The system just anticipated and blocked a distributed denial-of-service attack pattern that won't be commonly used for another 2 years. Sarah peered over Ava's shoulder at the screen, watching their integrated system respond to threats like a living organism. It's not just blocking attacks. It's learning from them, storing the patterns, and using that knowledge to predict similar threats across completely different network architectures. We've created something that doesn't just protect networks, Ava whispered, the magnitude of their achievement sinking in. We've created something that makes networks smarter. By the end of the 6th week, they had more than a prototype. They had a revolutionary cybersecurity platform that combined predictive AI with quantum-enhanced adaptive defenses. It was everything Sarah had dreamed of creating at Meridian, and more. The technology was ready. Now they needed Elena Rodriguez to help them change the world. Elena Rodriguez's office in downtown Seattle defied every stereotype Sarah had about venture capitalists. Instead of intimidating glass and steel, the space felt like an artist's studio crossed with a tech lab. Exposed brick walls covered with whiteboards full of equations, vintage computers alongside cutting-edge hardware, and plants everywhere. The woman herself was equally unexpected. Jeans and a Stanford t-shirt instead of a power suit, bare feet propped on her desk as she studied their technical documentation with laser focus. This is impossible, Elena said after 20 minutes of silence, finally looking up from the prototype demonstration running on her laptop. AI-driven threat prediction with quantum-enhanced adaptive responses, learning and evolving in real time. The computational requirements alone should make this prohibitively expensive. Sarah exchanged a glance with Ava, uncertain whether Elena's tone indicated amazement or dismissal. Actually, the quantum processing makes it more efficient, not less, by using quantum superposition for parallel threat analysis. I know how quantum computing works, Elena interrupted, but her smile took the sting out of the words. What I don't understand is how 2 brilliant researchers with no funding managed to build something that defense contractors have been trying to develop for a decade. Desperation, Sarah said honestly, And the advantage of not being told what's impossible. Elena laughed, a genuine sound that filled the eccentric office. I've built 3 companies from nothing, and that might be the most honest answer I've ever heard in a pitch meeting. She spun her chair to face them directly. Let me tell you what I see here. You've developed technology that doesn't just defend against cyber attacks, it learns from them. It adapts. It evolves. This isn't just an incremental improvement. It's a paradigm shift. But, Sarah prompted, sensing hesitation. But bringing paradigm-shifting technology to market requires more than brilliant engineering. It requires strategy, timing, and the ability to convince conservative buyers to trust their most critical systems to an unproven company. Elena's expression grew serious. The cybersecurity market is dominated by established players with decades of relationships and billions in resources. They don't just compete on technology. They compete on trust, reliability, and the safety of choosing the market leader. Ava leaned forward. So you're saying it's impossible for a startup to break into this market? I'm saying it's impossible to break in by playing their game. Elena stood and walked to one of her whiteboards, grabbing a marker. But what if we don't play their game? What if we create an entirely new game? She began sketching a diagram, traditional cybersecurity companies in one column, their proposed approach in another. Every major cybersecurity firm follows the same model. Sell expensive software licenses to enterprise clients, promise incremental improvements, and rely on customer inertia to maintain market share. They're essentially digital landlords collecting rent on protection services. And our approach? Sarah asked. Performance-based cybersecurity. Instead of selling licenses, we guarantee results. Elena's marker moved rapidly across the whiteboard. We don't charge for software. We charge for successful protection. If your network gets breached while our system is active, you don't pay. If we prevent attacks that would have cost you millions, we share in the value we've created. Sarah felt her pulse quickening. The model was audacious, but it made perfect sense. We'd be betting our entire revenue stream on our technology's effectiveness. Exactly. Which is either incredibly stupid or incredibly confident. Elena turned back to them with a grin. Given what I've seen of your system, I'm voting for confident. Ava was already running calculations on her phone. The liability exposure would be enormous. We'd need insurance, legal protections, carefully structured contracts. All solvable problems, Elena said, waving dismissively. The real question is whether you're ready to put your money where your innovation is. Because if we do this, if we really commit to performance-based cybersecurity, you'll be betting everything on the belief that your technology is as revolutionary as I think it is. Sarah thought about Marcus Blackwood, sitting in his corner office, taking credit for innovations he'd never understood. He'd built his empire on the old model, selling promises, managing relationships, and ensuring that failure was always someone else's responsibility. What Elena was proposing was the exact opposite, a business model where success was the only option. There's something else to consider, Sarah said slowly. This approach would disrupt the entire industry. Established players won't just compete with us, they'll try to destroy us. Good. Elena's smile was fierce. Disruption isn't a side effect of what we're planning. It's the goal. The cybersecurity industry has become complacent, profitable, and fundamentally broken. Companies spend billions on protection that doesn't work. And when breaches happen, everyone shrugs and buys more expensive software. She pointed to a newspaper clipping on her wall, a headline about another massive data breach at a major corporation. Every one of these represents thousands of people whose personal information was stolen, whose lives were disrupted, whose trust was violated. Not because the technology to prevent it doesn't exist, but because the incentives are all wrong. Security companies make money whether their products work or not. Sarah felt something clicking into place, not just a business model, but a mission. We're not just building a company, we're fixing a broken system. Now you're getting it. Elena capped her marker and sat back down. The question is, are you ready for what comes next? Because if we do this right, if we execute perfectly, we won't just be successful, will be threatening the profit margins of every major player in the industry, including Meridian Technologies, Ava observed. Especially Meridian Technologies. Elena pulled up something on her computer, then turned the screen toward them. It was a financial report showing Meridian's cybersecurity division revenue, $2.3 billion annually. Marcus Blackwood's company makes most of its money selling enterprise security solutions that are incrementally better than last year's model. What happens to that revenue stream when customers can get demonstrably superior protection for free, paying only when results are delivered? Sarah stared at the numbers, realizing the magnitude of what they were contemplating. They weren't just starting a company. They were declaring war on an entire industry structure that had made Marcus and people like him billions of dollars. "I'm in," she said quietly. "So am I," Ava added immediately. Elena nodded, as if she'd expected nothing less. "Then let's talk about execution. We'll need initial capital for infrastructure, legal protection for our liability model, and most importantly, a proof-of-concept client willing to let us protect their systems under our performance guarantee." "Any ideas on who might be willing to take that risk?" Sarah asked. "Actually, yes." Elena's expression grew thoughtful. "I've been consulting with a mid-size healthcare company called MedSecure. They've been breached 3 times in the past 2 years, spending millions on traditional cybersecurity solutions that keep failing. Their CEO, Dr. Janet Kim, is desperate enough to try something radical. Healthcare data, Ava mused. High-value targets, strict regulatory requirements, massive liability if breaches occur. Which makes it the perfect test case, Elena concluded. If our system can protect healthcare data, some of the most targeted information on the planet, it can protect anything. Over the next 3 hours, they outlined a battle plan that was equal parts business strategy and technical implementation. Elena would handle initial funding and legal structures. Ava would focus on scaling their AI algorithms for enterprise deployment. Sarah would lead the integration and deployment team. As the meeting wound down, Elena walked them to the door, her expression mixing excitement with caution. "I need to be clear about something. What we're attempting has never been done before. Performance-based cybersecurity, AI-driven threat prediction, quantum-enhanced adaptive defense. Any one of these would be ambitious for a startup, all 3 together. Is either revolutionary or suicidal," Sarah finished. "Probably both." Elena shook their hands firmly. "But I'd rather fail attempting something extraordinary than succeed at something ordinary. Besides," she added with a wicked grin, "imagine Marcus Blackwood's face when he realizes that the woman he tried to destroy is about to make his entire business model obsolete." 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in the lobby of MedSecure's headquarters in Bellevue, watching their revolutionary system initialize on the company's network for the first time. The past weeks had been a blur of legal documents, technical integration, and sleepless nights perfecting code that would either launch their company or destroy their credibility forever. Dr. Janet Kim, MedSecure's CEO, stood beside Sarah watching the monitoring displays with the intensity of someone whose company's survival depended on the outcome. "Your system is beautiful," she said quietly. "I can actually see it learning, adapting to our network architecture in real time." "The real test comes when someone tries to break in," Sarah replied, her stomach tight with nervous energy. "Our AI has identified 17 potential vulnerability points in your existing infrastructure and is already implementing adaptive countermeasures. And if it works? If you actually prevent the next attempted breach?" Sarah thought about the contract they'd signed. MedSecure would pay nothing for the first 6 months unless their system prevented a successful attack. If it worked, the payment would be substantial. If it failed, Sarah's company would cover all damages and losses. "If it works, we'll have proven that cybersecurity doesn't have to be a protection racket. Companies won't have to pay for promises. They'll pay for results." Dr. Kim nodded slowly. "And if it doesn't work?" Sarah smiled, remembering Elena's words about betting everything on her belief in their technology. "Then we'll learn something valuable and come back stronger." What she didn't say was that failure wasn't an option. Not just because their company depended on success, but because everything she'd endured at Meridian, Marcus's betrayal, David Morrison's theft, the systematic destruction of her achievements, would only mean something if she used that pain to build something better. As if summoned by her thoughts, Sarah's phone buzzed with a news alert. Meridian Technologies had just announced a major cybersecurity contract with a Fortune 500 company, crediting David Morrison's innovative quantum encryption protocols for securing the deal. Sarah deleted the alert without reading the full article. Marcus could have his stolen innovations and hollow victories. She was building something he couldn't steal, couldn't control, and couldn't understand. A company that succeeded by making its customers' success the only metric that mattered. 6 months after their MedSecure deployment, Sarah's phone rang at 3:47 a.m. She jolted awake in her new apartment, still modest but no longer desperate, and saw Dr. Janet Kim's name on the screen. "Sarah, you need to see this." Janet's voice was tight with controlled excitement. "We just repelled the most sophisticated attack I've ever seen. Your system didn't just stop it. It traced the intrusion back to its source and documented everything." Sarah was already reaching for her laptop. "How sophisticated are we talking?" "Nation-state level. The kind of attack that would have destroyed our company 6 months ago. But your AI predicted it 3 days before it launched. And your adaptive protocols countered every single vector. Sarah, they tried everything. Spear phishing, zero-day exploits, distributed denial of service, even attempted hardware infiltration through our supply chain." Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard, accessing the incident logs. What she saw made her breath catch. The attack signatures were unmistakable. This wasn't just sophisticated, it was personal. The intrusion patterns matched techniques she'd seen in classified research during her time at Meridian. "Janet, I need you to preserve everything. Every log, every trace, every piece of evidence. And I need to make some calls." "Sarah, there's something else." The attack didn't just fail. It exposed the entire network of compromised systems they were using. Your system essentially turned their own attack infrastructure against them. "We have evidence of similar attacks on dozens of other companies, including some very familiar names." Sarah's pulse quickened. What kind of familiar names? Meridian Technologies, for one. And based on the timestamps, they've been getting hit regularly for months. Successfully. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. While she'd been building a company that actually protected its clients, Marcus's billion-dollar security empire had been failing to protect even itself. The irony was almost too perfect. "Janet, I need to call Elena and Ava. This changes everything." 3 hours later, the 3 founders of Quantum Shield Security sat in Elena's office, surrounded by printouts of attack logs, financial projections, and news articles that painted a devastating picture of the traditional cybersecurity industry's failures. "It's not just Meridian," Elena said, highlighting sections of a comprehensive report they'd compiled. "Every major cybersecurity company has suffered significant breaches in the past 6 months. Their own products can't even protect their own systems." Ava looked up from her analysis of the attack patterns. "This is coordinated. Someone is systematically testing the defenses of every major player in the industry, and they're all failing. Except us. The question is what we do with this information," Sarah said, though she already knew the answer. Elena's expression was grim but determined. "We go public, full transparency. We publish the evidence, demonstrate how our system succeeded where theirs failed, and let the market decide whether they want real protection or expensive promises." "That's declaring war on the entire industry," Ava pointed out. "The industry declared war on us the moment they decided profit was more important than protection," Sarah replied. "We're just fighting back." The press conference 2 weeks later sent shockwaves through the cybersecurity world. Standing at a podium in Seattle's convention center, Sarah presented irrefutable evidence that Quantum Shield's revolutionary approach had prevented attacks that had successfully compromised every major traditional security firm. "For too long, cybersecurity has been a protection racket," Sarah said, her voice carrying to every corner of the packed auditorium. "Companies pay billions for software that doesn't work, and when breaches happen, vendors shrug and sell them upgrades. We're proposing something radical," cybersecurity that actually works. The Q&A session was brutal. Industry representatives attacked their methodology, questioned their experience, and suggested that a startup couldn't possibly outperform established players. Sarah fielded every question with calm precision, letting the data speak for itself. Then, Marcus Blackwood himself stepped to the microphone. Sarah's heart hammered as she saw him for the first time since walking out of his office nearly a year ago. He looked older, more strained, but his voice still carried that familiar, authoritative tone. "Miss Chen," he said, his voice echoing through the suddenly silent auditorium. "Your claims are certainly bold, but experience has taught me that revolutionary promises often fail to deliver revolutionary results. How do you respond to critics who suggest that your company's success is based on luck rather than innovation?" The room held its collective breath. Sarah could feel the weight of everyone's attention, the moment's significance hanging in the air like electricity before a storm. This was it. The confrontation she'd been preparing for since the day Marcus had tried to erase her from her own success story. "Mr. Blackwood," Sarah replied, her voice steady and clear, "I respond by noting that luck doesn't prevent nation-state cyber attacks. Luck doesn't trace intrusions back to their source. And luck certainly doesn't protect companies when traditional security systems fail." She paused, letting her words sink in before delivering the blow she'd been saving for this moment. "In fact, I'm curious about your perspective on luck, given that Meridian Technologies has suffered 17 successful breaches in the past 6 months, including one just last week that compromised your client database. Would you attribute that to bad luck or inadequate protection?" The auditorium erupted. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, and Marcus's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, anger, and finally, something that looked like fear. "I don't know where you're getting your information," he began. "From the same source that documented every attack against every major cybersecurity firm in the industry," Sarah interrupted. "Our system doesn't just protect our clients, it monitors the entire threat landscape. We know exactly how traditional security is failing because we see it failing in real time." Marcus tried to recover, but the damage was done. Sarah had just exposed the dirty secret that everyone in the industry knew but nobody talked about. The emperor had no clothes. The companies selling cybersecurity couldn't even secure themselves. The aftermath was swift and devastating. Within 48 hours, Meridian's stock price had dropped 30%. Major clients began demanding explanations for breaches they hadn't been told about. Industry analysts started asking hard questions about the effectiveness of products that cost billions but couldn't protect their own creators. But Marcus wasn't finished. If Sarah had learned anything from her time at Meridian, it was that Marcus Blackwood didn't accept defeat gracefully. The legal assault began 3 days later. Patent infringement claims, industrial espionage accusations, and contract violation suits. A coordinated attack designed to crush Quantum Shield under the weight of legal fees and regulatory scrutiny. "He's trying to bury us in litigation," Elena said during an emergency meeting in their new headquarters. A modest office space that felt like a palace compared to Sarah's coffee shop beginnings. "Even if we win every case, the cost of defending ourselves could destroy the company." Sarah studied the legal documents spread across their conference table, each one representing another attack on everything they'd built. But instead of despair, she felt something else: clarity. "He's making the same mistake he made a year ago," she said quietly. "What mistake?" Ava asked. "He's underestimating me. Again." Sarah gathered the legal papers into a neat stack. "Marcus thinks this is about business, about market share and profit margins. But this isn't about business anymore. This is about proving that merit matters more than manipulation, that innovation matters more than intimidation." She looked around the table at her partners, brilliant women who had bet their careers on a shared vision of how technology should serve humanity rather than exploit it. "We're not going to fight him in courtrooms or boardrooms," Sarah continued. "We're going to fight him in the marketplace. Every day we keep our systems running, every attack we prevent, every client we protect. That's our answer to his lawsuits." "And if the legal costs destroy us anyway?" Elena asked. Sarah smiled. remembering something Marcus had said during their last confrontation. "You'll never succeed without backing, without resources, without someone like me opening doors. Then we'll have failed doing something that mattered," she said. "But we're not going to fail. Because Marcus taught me something valuable. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the one with the most power. It's the one with the least to lose and the most to prove." As if summoned by her words, Sarah's phone buzzed with a news alert. Another major corporation had been breached, their data stolen despite millions spent on traditional cybersecurity. The attack had succeeded in under 6 hours. Sarah deleted the alert and looked up at her partners. "How many companies have contacted us since the press conference?" 47, Elena replied, including 3 Fortune 500 companies and 2 government agencies. "Then we have work to do." Sarah stood, feeling the weight of responsibility and the lightness of purpose in equal measure. "Marcus wants a war? Let's give him one he'll never forget." The battle for the future of cybersecurity was about to begin, and Sarah Chen was no longer the frightened employee who had walked out of Meridian Technologies. She was a warrior with weapons Marcus had never seen coming, principles he couldn't steal, innovations he couldn't understand, and a team he couldn't control. 18 months after the press conference that changed everything, Sarah stood in the boardroom of Quantum Shield Security's new headquarters, a gleaming 40-story tower in downtown Seattle, with a view that rivaled Marcus Blackwood's former perch. The irony wasn't lost on her that she now occupied the building directly across from Meridian Technologies, where 4 lease signs had appeared on multiple floors. "The Goldman Sachs valuation is official," Elena announced, sliding a leather portfolio across the mahogany table. "Quantum Shield Security is now valued at $210 million, with projected growth that could reach $500 million within 2 years. Sarah opened the portfolio, staring at numbers that would have seemed impossible when she was coding in coffee shops. But the figures weren't what mattered most. It was what they represented. Every dollar of valuation was backed by real protection, genuine innovation, and the trust of clients who had never been breached while under their care. $210 million, Ava repeated, shaking her head in amazement. "Remember when we thought Elena was crazy for suggesting performance-based cybersecurity?" "I remember when I thought I was crazy for walking away from a steady paycheck," Sarah replied, but her smile was warm. The woman who had fled Meridian in shame was gone, replaced by someone who had learned to bet on herself and win. Elena's expression grew more serious. "There's something else. The Wall Street Journal is running a story tomorrow about Meridian's bankruptcy filing. They want a comment from you." Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions. She'd dreamed of this moment for months, imagined the satisfaction of seeing Marcus's empire crumble. But now that it was happening, the victory felt more bittersweet than triumphant. "What's the official cause?" she asked. "Multiple factors. Client defections following the breach revelations, failed legal battles that drained their cash reserves, and most importantly, their inability to compete with our performance-based model." Elena paused. "Marcus leveraged everything trying to destroy us. When that failed, he had nothing left to pivot with." Sarah walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, the same view she'd admired from Marcus's office when she still believed merit would be rewarded. Now she understood that merit had to be fought for, protected, and sometimes built from scratch when existing systems failed. "There's more," Elena continued gently. "Marcus has been trying to reach you. Jennifer Walsh called 3 times this week." The mention of Marcus's former assistant, now presumably unemployed along with thousands of other Meridian employees, reminded Sarah that victory always came with casualties. Not everyone at Meridian had been complicit in Marcus's toxic leadership. "What does he want?" "To meet. He says he has something important to discuss." Sarah turned back to her partners, women who had believed in her vision when she barely believed in it herself. "What do you think?" "I think you've already won," Ava said firmly. "You don't owe him anything." "But maybe you owe yourself the closure," Elena added thoughtfully. "The chance to look him in the eye and know that you didn't just survive what he did to you, you transcended it." 2 days later, Sarah sat in the lobby of the Four Seasons Hotel, waiting for the man who had once seemed to hold absolute power over her future. She'd chosen the location deliberately, neutral ground, where neither of them held advantage, where the conversation would be about equals rather than predator and prey. Marcus appeared at exactly 2 p.m., and Sarah was struck by how much he'd changed. The perfectly styled hair now showed gray at the temples, the expensive suit couldn't hide the weight he'd lost, and most telling of all, the commanding presence that had once filled rooms was gone. He looked like what he'd always been beneath the corporate armor, a man who had confused position with power, authority with respect. Sarah. He sat across from her, his movements careful and deliberate. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Marcus. Sarah kept her voice neutral, professional. I hear congratulations are in order. Meridian's bankruptcy filing must be a relief after months of uncertainty. He winced at her directness but nodded. You always were honest to a fault. I suppose I should be grateful for that consistency. What did you want to discuss? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he looked up, Sarah saw something she'd never seen before: vulnerability. I wanted to apologize, he said quietly, for what I did to you, for what I said, for the way I treated your innovations and your contributions. I wanted to apologize, and I wanted to understand. Understand what? How you did it. How you took nothing and built something that destroyed everything I spent decades creating. His voice carried no anger, only a kind of exhausted curiosity. I've had a lot of time to think lately, and I keep coming back to our last conversation at Meridian. You said I didn't understand your kind of power. You were right. Sarah studied his face, looking for manipulation or hidden agenda but finding only genuine confusion. What kind of power did you think I had? That's just it. I thought you had none. I thought power was about control, about making people dependent on you, about being the one who decided who succeeded and who failed. Marcus shook his head. I never understood that real power comes from making other people more powerful. Is that what you think I did? I know it's what you did. Ava Winters was brilliant but isolated in academia. Elena Rodriguez was successful but looking for meaning. You brought them together around a vision that made all of you stronger than you could have been alone. Marcus's voice carried a note of wonder. And then you did the same thing with your clients, your employees, your entire industry. You made cybersecurity about empowering protection rather than selling fear. Sarah felt an unexpected pang of sympathy for the man across from her. Marcus, what you're describing isn't a business strategy. It's just how you treat people when you believe they matter. And that's what I never understood. I thought people were resources to be managed, competitors to be defeated, obstacles to be overcome. I never saw them as... He struggled for the words. As partners in something bigger than any of us individually. The conversation continued for another hour, Marcus asking questions about decisions that had seemed obvious to Sarah, strategies that had felt natural, innovations that had emerged from collaboration rather than competition. It was like watching someone discover a foreign language they'd never known existed. Marisa. As they prepared to leave, Marcus made one final request. Sarah, I know I have no right to ask this, but Meridian is gone, but there are still good people who worked there. Talented engineers, dedicated analysts, people who believed in the mission even when the leadership failed them. Is there any chance that Quantum Shield might be hiring? Sarah finished the question he couldn't bring himself to ask. I know it's presumptuous. It's not presumptuous. It's practical. Sarah stood, extending her hand. Have them send their resumes to Elena Rodriguez. We're expanding rapidly, and good people are always welcome. Marcus shook her hand, his grip firm but not aggressive. Thank you. For everything. For showing me what I could have been, if I'd been brave enough to trust people instead of trying to control them. As Sarah watched him walk away, she realized that her victory was complete, not because she had destroyed Marcus Blackwood, but because she had become everything he had claimed she could never be, and done it without becoming anything like him. 6 months later, Sarah stood before a packed auditorium at the Global Cybersecurity Summit, delivering the keynote address that would be remembered as the moment the industry fundamentally changed direction. The title of her speech was simple: The future is collaborative. 5 years ago, I believed that success in cybersecurity, in any field, was about being the smartest person in the room, Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly to every corner of the audience. I was wrong. Success is about making sure everyone in the room is smart enough to solve problems you can't solve alone. She gestured to the screen behind her, showing Quantum Shield's latest innovation, an open-source threat intelligence platform that allowed security companies to share attack signatures in real time, creating a collective defense network that was stronger than any individual solution. We're not just changing how cybersecurity works, Sarah continued. We're changing how business works. From competition to collaboration, from secrecy to transparency, from extracting value to creating value. In the audience, she spotted familiar faces. Ava, now Chief Technology Officer of the most innovative AI research lab in the country. Elena, whose venture capital firm had become the go-to funding source for socially responsible technology companies. Even Tom Rodriguez, who had left Meridian to become Quantum Shield's Director of Ethical Technology. But the face that surprised her most was in the back row. Marcus Blackwood, taking notes like a student eager to learn from a master. Their eyes met briefly, and he nodded, a gesture of respect from someone who had finally understood the difference between power and leadership. Sarah's closing words would be quoted in business schools and leadership seminars for years to come. I used to think that success meant proving you could win alone. Now I know that success means proving that everyone can win together. The future belongs not to those who accumulate power, but to those who amplify it in others. The standing ovation lasted 7 minutes. Later that evening, at the summit's closing reception, Sarah stepped onto the hotel's rooftop terrace, looking out over the city lights that stretched to the horizon. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Saw your speech on the news. Your mother and I are proud of who you've become. But we always knew you had it in you." "Quite a view from up here," a voice said behind her. Sarah turned to see Elena and Ava approaching, champagne glasses in hand. "Better than the view from Marcus's old office," Sarah replied, accepting a glass. "Though I have to admit, I never imagined it would look like this." "What? Success?" Ava asked. "No, I always imagined success. I just never imagined it would feel like this." Sarah raised her glass. "To the journey that taught us that the best way to defeat a broken system isn't to destroy it. It's to build something so much better that the old way becomes obsolete." They clinked glasses as the Seattle skyline glittered around them, 3 women who had proven that innovation, integrity, and collaboration could triumph over intimidation, manipulation, and control. In the distance, the Meridian Technologies building stood dark and empty, its 4 lease signs barely visible in the evening light. But Sarah didn't see it as a monument to Marcus's failure. She saw it as a reminder that when one vision of the future dies, space is created for something better to take its place. The future was collaborative, and Sarah Chen had built it one partnership at a time. The Wall Street Journal headline read, "Quantum Shield Security acquired by Microsoft for $2.8 billion. Founders to lead new collaborative cybersecurity division." Sarah read the article from her new office in Microsoft's Redmond campus, where she would spend the next phase of her career scaling collaborative cybersecurity from a revolutionary startup approach to a global standard. The acquisition wasn't just about money. It was about proving that doing business the right way could be more profitable than the old methods of extraction and exploitation. Her desk held a single personal item, a framed photo from the coffee shop where she'd first met Ava, both of them hunched over laptops with determination and hope in their eyes. The scared, betrayed woman who had fled Meridian was gone, replaced by someone who had learned that the greatest revenge against those who try to diminish you is to become more than they ever imagined possible. Marcus Blackwood had been right about one thing. She had needed backing, resources, and people opening doors for her success. He'd just been wrong about who those people would be and what success would look like when it arrived. Sarah Chen had built an empire not by crushing her enemies, but by empowering her allies, and that empire was just getting started.